Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism. Your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you are tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Mormon Newscast. It is April 28th, 2025. It is a beautiful Monday, at least here in Southern Utah. How are the two of you, Radio Free Mormon and Rebecca Biblioteca?
Well, I'm fabulous. Was that voiceover one of the female leaders in the church that none of us can ever name? Was that one of them?
I figured I can get away with that. So
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Nice. How are you doing, Rebecca?
I'm not bad. I'm excited for today's show. We have so many really interesting stories, breaking news from all over the globe. It's going to be pretty amazing.
Should be fun. Mr. Radio Free Mormon, how are you this evening?
I'm very well. Thank you so much, Bill, and looking forward to a fascinating show tonight.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're excited, and it should be a great show. Rebecca, you mentioned some breaking news. We should start with that. What you brought this to us. What is going on that is breaking just today?
There is some breaking news, and I have to say that I broke it even to people where it happened who didn't necessarily know about it. We are talking about the McKinney, Texas Temple, and the fact that the First Presidency just today has announced that it will be renamed the Fairview, Texas Temple. Now, this is very relevant, and we're going to discuss it later, but kind of exciting. It just kind of hit me while I was waiting for my commuter train, and I'm like, do I make a short? Do I announce it? Do I get on the train? You know, I was very conflicted on what to do. But interesting news.
Is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence it happened today, the day before this meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I do not believe it was a coincidence at all. And this was one of the conditions that the Planning and Zoning Board in Fairview had outlined as far as passing the application. So we'll get into that when it's my turn to do my segment. But yeah, breaking news. It's now, and think about this. It was announced as the Prosper Temple. Then it became the McKinney Temple once the location changed. And now it's the Fair. Has there ever been a temple that has gone through 3 name changes? I don't know.
No.
Not that I know.
Just people going through the temple only get 1 name change. So
okay.
By the way, did I say it on the air, or was it to you, Rebecca, and or Bill, that they should never, ever have put this down as something they wanted because it was an obvious gimme that the church could agree to?
Yep.
And
see, I don't remember them doing the name as one of the final changes. They mentioned it earlier in the meeting, but I didn't.
It's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go into detail on that. Yeah, because I'm not super happy about it either. I mean, it's breaking news, but that doesn't mean we have to be happy about it.
Yeah.
No, okay. So they're trying to be good neighbors. They'll agree to this one, and the other two, well, they're glaring by their absence from this statement, I think. The other two conditions regarding height and lighting, right, Rebecca?
You are literally giving my segment. Let's read what we're going to have today, and then we'll move into it. We can't wait. We're all chomping at the bit.
And then the short, we should play that later when you talk about this at length, correct?
Or you don't have to talk about it because it's just me repeating myself, looking the very same as I did 2 hours ago. So, but yes, we could.
And we'll just note, folks, the Fairview Planning and Zoning meeting update, we brought that to you live this past Thursday. Rebecca will go into detail about what happened there and what has happened since. College credit for LDS missionaries, that's a small story I'll bring you. Immigration status and temple recommends. This is Mr. Radio Free Mormon. The Arizona LDS Seminary building update. This is also RFM. And then LDS membership stats state by state. And there might be a few smaller stories along the way, but those are the main ones we're bringing to you. And with that, let's jump into what you have for us.
Awesome. And I'll start out. I just had to add this because if you guys remember last week, if you can think back that far, I have a hard time sometimes. We covered this interesting article on the church website about President and Sister Robert Preston, and they were being called as mission president and wife. And we took note that poor Sister Robert, as we like to call her, we couldn't see the rest of her face. And of course, we talked about it metaphorically, and I had to put up a picture of the Handmaid's Tale and all of that. And it's been on the church website, I think, since around 2011. So for quite a while. And I have to say, I often have a suspicion that perhaps the Strengthening the Church Members Committee is watching the newscast. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I feel like the day after we reported this story, look at the picture now.
Wow.
Kind of gives me goosebumps. I know, we can see her full lovely face. And that was the whole point. She's a lovely person. Let's see her beautiful smile. What do you guys think about that? Is it a coincidence? The very day after we broke the story or drew attention to it on the newscast.
I think not only are we doing a huge favor, and should be paid, by the way, by the SCMC for helping them out with this kind of stuff. But really, Rebecca, I want everybody to know this is your story. I didn't find this out. Bill didn't find this out. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill. This was your story you came up with, and you ran with it. And then it's on this show. The next day, the church changes the picture so we can see Sister Preston's entire face. And I think that's amazing.
I'm just surprised she does have her mandible. So
yeah, we
are good. It's
not headgear. Nope.
No severe burn victim, nothing else going on. She is perfectly okay. And hence there really was no reason to exclude the bottom half of her face.
I know.
It could be so easily changed and fixed had someone noticed or cared or thought that it made a difference, because he showed up, if we go back one, he showed up in his entirety. There he is. And, maybe she wasn't so important, but anyway, I would say, what?
I'm sorry, Rebecca, on that last one.
Yes.
I just want to make sure everybody knows, if they didn't watch it last week, that one on the left at the bottom, that is where the picture cut off on the page.
Yes.
This isn't, the picture was cut off by Rebecca taking a screenshot. The white is part of the page all the way around. That's how it used to be up until the day after Rebecca pointed it out on this show last Monday.
And there it is. We're just trying to do good. I think that's the bottom line, right? We're just trying to draw attention and make the world a better place, especially for Sister Robert, whose real name is Patricia, I believe, if you read through the article. So I just had to show that. And we have another story coming up that we're going to talk about that also changed the very day after the newscast later on. So stay tuned for that for sure.
That's going to be another Rebecca story as well, I believe.
We're really making a difference, aren't we?
Well, Rebecca is.
Well, she is.
I feel like we are. Maybe we're narcissists, but I feel like the world revolves around it now. All right. The world certainly does revolve around Fairview recently. It's all things Fairview. The Fairview Planning and Zoning meeting, big update. Now, we aired this on Thursday night, and I checked all of our stats. There have, since it aired, been over 6,500 people between our two channels, because it airs on both of our channels, Mormonish and Mormon Discussions, who have watched this planning and zoning meeting. That's incredible to me that people are that interested in sitting down and watching a civic meeting. I mean, who knew that this would be how we spend our time? So this meeting happened. It was several hours long, and we live streamed the whole thing with commentary.
I had to duck out early because I had a monstrous headache.
Right. We forgot to ask, how are you feeling now, RFN? You did have to leave. I forgot.
I got better.
Yeah, I got better. Well, good. We'll gear up, because as we'll talk about, tomorrow night is another big old long ass meeting, if I can say that on the air. So we're going to give you a little update in case you weren't one of those 6,500 people that stuck with us to the end and watched it. So basically, breaking news. We're going to go into that again right here. And you can make your comment again, RFM. Just the fact that the Planning Commission did pass the temple. It approved it to go on to the next phase of the town council meeting. But there were certain conditions. Yes. One of the conditions was rename it from McKinney to Fairview. And what are your thoughts on that, RFM? You were saying that before I cut you off.
All I said was that the two main issues are the height and the lighting. Correct?
Yep.
Because you're the expert on this. But it's the height and the lighting. And then to throw in another condition having to do with the name of the church under the heading of who cares. What you're doing them is giving the opportunity to obviously agree to that in exchange for not agreeing to the other two.
Exactly. And it looks better for the church. And I'll just zoom ahead while we're talking about that. Yes, the approval was with 4 conditions, and the 4 conditions were: reduce the steeple height to 68 feet and 3 inches, the same height as the church's meeting house next to the proposed temple site. Okay, that's one of them. A lot harder to do than change the name, huh? The next one was change the temple's name from the McKinney, Texas Temple to Fairview. Check. The next one was, I guess I only have 3 here. There were more that were not very relevant about sewer and traffic. The third big one was shut off the temple's exterior lighting on Sunday, Monday and holidays when the temple is closed, and every other night between 11 and 5. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Those two are going to be very pivotal at our meeting that we watch on Wednesday. So let's go back here. Okay, so we have the breaking news. Of course, surrounding these two meetings, we have letters. I talked about this one last time where it told all the LDS members to show up in blue shirts. That's still in force. We will expect tomorrow night to see tons of people in blue shirts representing the LDS Church. Another letter that I picked up on that I didn't talk about last week, of course, in addition to wearing the blue shirt, fasting. Prayers. We're fasting for guidance and miracles and a way forward and all of that. So they're going to be fasting and wearing their blue shirts. Watch out. All right. So here we are. Here's a picture of our thumbnail and some pictures from the planning and zoning meeting. It was at the town council there, so a smaller room, but a huge turnout. And I think they said 33 people spoke. Some were blue shirts from the LDS community and some were green shirts from Fairview United, the residents there in Fairview. And they're really interesting. We took a lot of notes, very interesting. I think I've posted several shorts from the meeting. If you want to go and try to find those, some of the RFM and I both agreed on what was the best statement of the night. It was this woman who just really laid it out there as far as what the residents kind of feel like, and in a very respectful way, but that was a good one. Here's just a little video, a little news clip to kind of let you guys know exactly what happened, and then we'll go into a few more details.
It's going to take me just a second to get that up there. I've got to find...
I know all the tech behind the scenes is so hard, but yeah, I mean, it was fascinating. Like the time went like that as we were watching, just as person after person got up and, you know, expressed what they were feeling. And they had some representatives from the church who spoke. And I kind of felt like, I don't know, that they didn't do the job that they could have done. It almost seemed like when they were being asked questions, they didn't know some of the answers. They came across as either not knowing the answers or sort of fudging the answers.
Well, remember, that's because the expert lawyer was away attending the graduation of his son.
Yeah, but we all noticed that. It was kind of strange. You know, when you're there in this really pivotal meeting making this presentation, there was a lot of hemming and hawing and not exactly sure of what was going on. And I think the residents noticed that. And that makes you feel like, are you hiding something or what is happening? You know, because it's a very charged situation. And it's been going on for quite some time with these meetings. So
yeah, and you caught the guy out, Rebecca, who basically said in a convoluted way that they hadn't agreed or submitted to an agreement to turn the lighting off at all.
Yeah, we're going to show that. I pulled that out. Yep. Absolutely. I know. It's like we're connected through some kind of weird brainwave. It's like, you know exactly what's in my presentation. Oh, my dog. All right. Have we got it?
It's the angry
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has dealt with months of community criticism and design changes trying to build a new temple. But there is finally a path forward tonight. The church wants to build it in the Collin County town of Fairview, just south of McKinney. But in the last hour, the Zoning and Planning Commission voted to approve the temple if the church makes substantial changes, including a lowering of the spire height, changing its name, and adjusting several aspects of lighting. The church already lowered the spire from 174 feet to 120, saying that was a fair compromise, but opponents disagreed.
It is a symbol to us. We look to the heavens. It's where heaven and earth meets. And so having a spire is important to us.
Our residential zones should be protected, and that's what we're all about. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with who the applicants are.
It is not clear if the church will accept those conditions, and the town council will still need to approve the plans.
Exactly. There's that phrase where heaven and earth meet. Oh my goodness. We heard that quite a bit during the meeting, right? Oh my goodness, my dogs. All right. So we already went over this. It was finally approved at the end. It was a nail biter and these conditions are in place. And in a couple slides, I'll go into exactly what that means in terms of the town council. Now there are several papers that have been covering this. This is the Tribune, I believe. The statement from the church, it says church officials have said they've tried to accommodate the town's wishes, but it remains to be seen if the town and church can finally mend these differences. Here's the statement. The adjustments to size and height were made in good faith to address local concerns and demonstrate our desire to be respectful neighbors, said church spokesman Melissa McNeely. That's who you saw on the video there. We are grateful for the legal protections that ensure the free exercise of religion and look forward to being part of this growing community. So they're, of course, still saying the same thing they always have. Now, there were a couple statements. I also have to point out some of these statements are taking from the Dallas Morning News. I put a little kiss on that because our reporter friend Lily there, she just has kept this in the news nonstop. I mean, she really has every little angle, every little facet of it. The Dallas Morning News is a really awesome paper. And this particular reporter has done an amazing job. I know she was at the meeting last night, which is why she was able to break the story Thursday night, very quickly after it came out. So in the Dallas Morning News, Henry Lessner, who is the mayor, says of the meeting, as mayor, I know our community appreciates the time and expertise of the P&Z board members have shown dealing with the difficult circumstances that have been forced upon our town, he says in his statement. All right, let's hear from the mayor pro tem. Now, this is the mayor that will be the mayor the very beginning of May. So this mayor, John Hubbard, he is going to be dealing with the church going forward, whatever happens, whether it's a suit or they start building, he's going to be the one that's going to be, in the front, leading that charge there. And he said the council members will heavily consider the recommendations made by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that means they're going to take it very seriously. And I'm going to show you in a slide or two the different things that could happen at that meeting. Now, RFM brought up the lighting. And to me, the lighting is probably more important almost than the height. Those of us that live next to those temples, we know what that means. I'm sure a lot of you, like I said before, I lived next to the Mount Timpanogos Temple when my kids were growing up, and I had to buy blackout curtains because I was a mile away and it was still that glow in the window that didn't let true dark come in. So definitely the lighting is an issue. So at the meeting, it was brought to everybody's attention that at the original application, they had included in that, although the steeple was 173 feet tall, part of the application said, we will dim the lights between this time and that time. There was some curbing of the lighting. So the Planning Commission is looking through the new application and they're like, I don't see anything about turning the lights off, between maybe 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Is that somewhere in this application? They're asking this very innocent question. Mm-hmm. This is what the church representative says back about the lighting. If we can play this, answering that question.
So again, thank you for your time, your consideration. And we do respectfully request approval of the application as it's been submitted. So with that, I'll stop and let you take it from there with questions or public hearings.
Okay. I'm sure we have questions, as always. So anybody like to go first?
Question I have concern about overnight lighting. In one of the original applications, it was stated that the LDS Temple would shut their lights off from 11 o'clock p.m. till 5 o'clock a.m. in the morning. Is that still a consideration and a situation that you're willing to comply with?
It's not. It's no longer part of the proposal. So as it is right now, it wasn't left off accidentally. It's been intentionally withdrawn as a condition. So others may want to speak more specifically to that, but as it is right now, we're given a lot of the other things that we have changed in terms of the scale of the building, and we're also recognize the lighting standards and ordinances for the town, and we'll be managing those fixtures to stay underneath those thresholds. So with that, right now, there's no offer to limit the lighting hours.
Shut up.
Yeah. So right there, I feel like they jumped the shark and lost everybody because
they lied. They came in there after taking out the most important thing, hoping they would get away with it. And the son of a bitch got caught, bam, right out of the gate.
Yeah, he did.
And then he went on and on and on and on, proving that it was intentional.
Yeah. And he said, we already gave you other stuff, so we're not going to give you this. I'm sorry. This is the most important thing. Being lit all night long, jack to Jesus like that. There's no ordinance that supports that. So yeah, I think right there.
The Mormons.
Exactly.
You cannot trust the Mormons.
I know. So right there, I believe everybody on the planning board started to get, I don't know, a little suspicious, just not on board. And if we go to, do you have any comments on that lighting, Bill? Because I know all of us were kind of floored when he said that while we were watching the meeting, which is why
it came up earlier, and then it also came up there where the church says, look, we've already made so many concessions. We've already taken the steeple height. By the way, the lady on the news program said the church had already reduced the steeple height. We've talked about this before, but the church could come in with anything. Again, the rules are the rules. It could come in and say, we're going to build a steeple that's 10,000 feet high, 2.7 miles into the air, whatever number you want that's extreme. And then it's like whatever the city says, whatever the town says, is like there's a negotiation and we have to compromise. When in reality, you coming up with an extreme number, which sort of sets the anchor, it isn't real. The number is whatever the code is, and anything you're asking above that is you requesting something beyond where the anchor has been set, and it's now up to the town to negotiate with you to compromise to what you're asking for. And everybody articulating this news story comes to it from the other angle, and that's just ridiculous, because if you just take an extreme situation, we all get it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Exactly. And I keep saying over and over, you are the applicant. There is no such thing as a concession on your side. You are the applicant. So
I have to say something. I have to modify what I said earlier in case someone accused me rightly of being extremist in my views. Yes, of course, you can trust Mormons in certain circumstances. Okay. The thing is this: you cannot trust a Mormon who is advocating for a religious position or proposal, a religious proposal, because then ethics go out the window and you try and do whatever you have to do to get what the church wants.
Well, it's a higher purpose. We saw that. We show it over and over. Senator Gordon Smith, you override your personal ethics, perhaps your responsibility to a town on a town board. We're going to talk about this later tonight, and you do what's needed by the church. So
lying is frequently a higher purpose.
With a higher purpose, and that makes it okay. And that's sort of the Nephi Laban story that we covered, last week with Lori Vallow. There's always a higher purpose for doing a dirty deed, I guess. All right, let's go back to our slides if we can, and I think we're going to talk about so in one of the articles, somebody on the Planning and Zoning Board said, I think all of us agreed that leaving the lights on all night is unacceptable. So they're starting to understand. They almost couldn't believe that somebody there applying for an application for a building would even say that. Oh no, we will not. And they also had questions about your operating hours. They're still thinking, okay, so you need the lights on when you're there. They don't yet understand, I don't think, that it's a billboard, that it's an advertisement. So they were like, well, you certainly, you wouldn't have them on during holidays or when you're closed Monday and Sunday. They still don't understand. And then they start to understand, oh, this is going to be lit all the time. It's something separate from people working there and needing the lighting. This is something different. This is an advertisement. And that's, again, I think when they just started kind of shaking their heads. And I think we all anticipated it would be one of the conditions if they did approve it. So
in the upper right of that slide,
let me go back.
I told you what the church is trying to create is the Utah equivalent of the beacons of Gondor.
You did mention that, and hardly anyone knew what you were talking about. But those of us that did, we got it.
We got it.
Yeah, these are two temples that I see all the time when I'm going up and down, I-15. So, but yeah, this is what they're looking for. So let's talk about the next steps. But first, really quickly, anything else from the meeting that stood out? Bill first, then RFM, because it was lengthy. It was. I said it was Mormon Stories level, right? It was 3.5 hours, and we were riveted the entire time. Any other takeaways from the meeting before we go to next steps?
Go, Bill. One thing I would say is that when we had the picture of the incoming mayor, and I didn't catch his name offhand.
John Hubbard.
John Hubbard.
Yeah.
There's something in there about all of these things will be considered. Council members will heavily consider recommendations made by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which the cynic in me goes, which means that they're not going to consider any of them. That's my fear, is that the fact that you have to state that is prepping everybody for the fact that you're going to give this thing the smooth ride through, and you want everyone to know that you really did take seriously those recommendations.
That's interesting.
anyway.
That's why this meeting is going to be so important. We literally don't know what will happen. That was our takeaway after planning and zoning, is that anything can happen. In fact, I had a bet with RFM, even if they would approve it or not. And I said they will. And then my co-host Landon said with conditions. And the bet was $50 in a cheesecake, if you recall.
Which you made unilaterally.
It's still, I did. I had to. Well,
After I left because of my headache.
You had stepped away, but I think the chat agreed with me. So, anyway, any final thoughts from you on the actual meeting? Then we'll talk about what happens next. Kind of like
I want to say just how I feel when I think of the fact that the first presidency had to issue a letter saying we'll change the name of the temple from McKinley to Fairview. Is that right? Or Fairview to McKinley?
First
from
Prosper,
McKinley to Fairview.
Then McKinney, then Fairview, and who knows what else.
That I mean, this is just so base. Is this really what prophets are for? To issue decrees changing the name of a building? They have nothing better to do. And the other side of it is that only makes it worse is that it's so obviously done for a political purpose.
Yes.
This is what President Monson, President Oaks, and President Eyring have just done, is they have shown the world that they are engaged in the basest of politics.
Yeah, well, a lot of people wondered, and questions, myself included, does the first presidency even know what's happening? Or are there so many layers of attorneys and representatives? Because the town officials have never talked to any kind of church leader, except for an area rep and then the attorneys that come. So, unless this statement was written for them, maybe they are kind of aware of what's happening.
They know. And you know why they know and why I'm sure they know? Because of you, Rebecca.
Oh, dear.
You are the burr under their saddle, the bee in their bonnet.
There it is. Well, you know what? I just really love the people of Fairview, and I want everybody to be good neighbors and get along. There, I use the church's phrase. So what is the next step here? The next step is going to be the town council meeting Tuesday, April 29th. We'll start our coverage at 5:30. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the interesting thing now is, had the Planning and Zoning Board not passed the application, said, no way, none of this works, we're not even going to try to do conditions, we say no. When it went to the town council, there would have had to be a super majority. 6 out of the 7 people would have had to vote yes to have it continue on. They didn't do that. The Planning and Zoning said, sure, we'll pass it. But you know what? If you do this and this and this and this, like we just outlined, the height, the lighting, and the name change. Also some sewer things connecting to Allen, because there is no sewage capability there now. And I think some
to be determined, wasn't it? They hadn't heard back yet.
Determined. Yeah, this is what happens. You send things back and forth, hint, hint, bell tower, until it's finally hammered out and you have a signed CUP. So 4 votes now are needed to pass the CUP. And if you remember, after mediation back in November, the whole town council, did sign and say, yeah, we would agree to this, which was 120 feet, 30,000 square feet, and then the 35 to 42 foot walls. So interesting, no super majority needed. So that makes the meeting. I have a question
for you, Rebecca.
Yes.
I understand what you mean when you say that if the Planning and Zoning Committee had said no, that the city council would have had to have a super majority to pass it. But they didn't say no. They said yes with these conditions. So I understand that in order to pass it with those conditions, they would need a simple majority at the city council. But what do they need as far as votes if they want to pass the church's plan, but without the conditions imposed?
Again, have you been nosing around in my slides? I swear.
Oh, honestly, no, I hadn't.
It's because we think alike, right? What would be the next logical question? Well, what the heck will they do? Or what can they do is the bigger question, right? And so 4 votes is all that's needed. As I understand it, there's no supermajority to do any of these things. Now, this is very interesting. They can pass it as recommended by the Planning and Zoning. That means all the conditions apply. We pass it. Church, you can build your temple if you meet every single one of those things. 68-foot spire, lights turned off on holidays, Mondays, Sundays, and between 11 and 5. They could pass it like that, and then it would be up to the church to go, and the church would have to do what they would have to do. They could also pass it, and they can change any or all of the conditions or add new conditions. Isn't that crazy? So they could say, you know what, the spire's fine. We'll keep that condition, but I would like to add something about traffic, or I would like to add something about landscaping, they can take out or put in whatever they would like. This is why I'm saying this meeting is going to be fascinating.
So basically, they can do anything they want, approving with more conditions, with fewer conditions, with all conditions, or denying it with or without prejudice, all by a simple majority tomorrow night.
That's right. And this is what I'm being told by people in the know, around the council, if I can say that. This is what I'm being told. The other thing they could do is they could deny it with prejudice. That means, nope, you're not building, and you can't bring back an application for some time. I believe it's like a year. They could also deny it without prejudice, which means, nope, we're not going to find common ground here. We deny it, but you can come back anytime with something else if you want.
That's what happened initially, wasn't it?
That's what happened initially. Yeah, they said, nope, we're not going to do 173 feet, 65-foot walls, 43-foot footprint, but come back tomorrow. And they did come back, if you remember. They said, we'll knock off 15 feet, and they said, we'll change the name. This was at the very beginning. Isn't that interesting? And when the town said no, the LDS Church said in the news, we made major concessions.
And they're going to say it again.
They're going to say it again. So that's another option too, with or without prejudice. And one I didn't realize, they can table the request. Just like, nope, we're done. We're not addressing it. We're just not even going to just out. Everybody go to IHOP. So that could happen too. I mean, I don't think that would ever happen, but it is an
option.
One
would think there would be a purpose behind it.
There would have to be a purpose behind it.
I've got a question. So this whole time, the church has made a ruckus over steeple height. Steeple height, God, that's important to God, even though it's random at all these other temples. Like sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher, but God really cares about this steeple's height.
God is kind of moody.
God hasn't said anything about the lights being on all night, has he?
No, and this is where the problem is for the church, I feel. And you see it too, Bill, and I'm sure you do too, RFM, because they can say, okay, fine, the steeple, whatever, but they can say absolute no on the lighting. If the church has to go in some kind of lawsuit or something about the lighting, I mean, they can't tell us why they need to be jacked to Jesus with the lighting nonstop, 24 hours a day, all year long.
How's the Mormon church going to light the world?
Well, there are pillar by day, cloud by day, pillar by night, Leahona. There are things that we don't have the doctrine of the lighting yet.
You remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have the doctrine of the lighting yet.
You guys, there's an application that was already submitted for this temple that said the lights on all night is not important to us. We will leave the lights off.
Exactly.
So if they go tomorrow night and say, look, you guys, we agreed on the temple height, you can have that. But you got to have the lights off from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. I can't imagine, again, you would have the church doing two things. One is that they would already be on the record saying we don't need the lights on all night in this area. Number one. Number two is that we would have to make an argument halfway through the process that God cares about the lights on the whole time, when we didn't do that in multiple chances that we had before this moment. I think that would work against them. I think Fairview could stick it to them by approving whatever parts that need to be, with the exception of things that have to be changed. Sewer might be an important thing, for instance, and require that the lights be off from 11 to 5. And then I think you have this, both sides are like, we both got one over on the other, and they both could live with it, and it would feel like a win to both sides.
Yep, I think that's absolutely correct, because, the lighting is what is going to be the most obtrusive feature forever going forward to the neighbors.
Rebecca, I think that's going to happen as well, but I will ask you, Rebecca, so how is the church's position diminished at all other than the name of the temple?
Well, and this is our concern. If we talk about that name change, they could say, look, we gave you one of the concessions. Now you give us the rest. So even at planning and zoning, I was sort of disheartened to see that that was one of the conditions, because it's so minor and really means nothing. And again, I think some people are still hoping maybe they'll just take it and go away, in which case it's already named Fairview. That means it's there. It's happening, right?
Yes. I would have rather had the temple next door called McKinney and say, yeah, look at the dumbass Mormons named their temple. However,
or the North Texas Temple or something like that. So just anything can happen. But your point, Bill, to the fact that they've already said the lighting doesn't matter, it's going to, or that they are willing to, turn it down. It's going to force them to say things out loud, like, you know what, we just want it and we can get it. it's going to force him to say that in so many words. And I don't know if that's really going to fly. So this is going to be fascinating. And again, the Mormon newscast will be covering this. It's on Mormon Discussions. It's on Mormon-ish. Go back and forth, pick your show. And it's going to start at 5:30 with pre-show, where we'll kind of go over some of this again to make sure everybody understands what's happening. And then at 6 p.m. Mountain Time is when it gets going. And if it's anything like last time, you will be riveted to the screen. I couldn't believe we had so many people viewing it, but it's absolutely fascinating. So
yeah, it actually looks like a horse race now.
It does look like a horse race. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we should take bets. I don't know. So I made this bingo card just because we hear so many phrases. I don't know, those of you that can see better, if you want to read some of my little phrases here that we can look for at the meeting. And these are gleaned from all the many meetings that we've sat through when it comes to Temple. Can you see any RFM? It's
I saw
so
the
light.
first one. That's why I was laughing. We just want to be a good neighbor.
Yep. Bingo. Or I was actually doing a drinking game of that last time. If you remember, every time somebody said that. And there is public comment, I should make clear, in this town council meeting. It'll be the very same thing. Public comment, blue shirt, green shirt, go on for several hours, and then debate and discussion among the town councils. So do you want to read a couple more of those? I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah, I like Beacons of Gondor down there at the right second from the top.
RFM has added his own.
It's right there, Beacons of Gondor.
Anyway, I'll put this bingo card on. Some of the things are like draw your eyes upward, where heaven and earth meet, right? That kind of thing. Our kids can't drive in the traffic. These are all the things that we hear over and over and over at these town council meetings. So, all right, I just want to end with one thing. And Bill alluded to this before. What have the top leaders in the church, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you this was a video, Bill. I forgot that I had this. This is Kulch's video. So I'll talk for a minute while you get this together. And I had sent him, if I recall, I had sent him Elder Bednar and President Nelson both talking about the temple and what's really important. And Kulch, he's so awesome. Hi, Kulch, in the chat. He was able to put these together. We just can't hear these enough because this is the prophet and the prophet in waiting. And this is what they're saying about temples.
I'm interested in hearing the reptilian version of this issue. Their position is.
Yep.
I hear people say, oh, that's a small temple. There's no such thing as a small temple. They're just temples. There's no such thing as small covenants or small ordinances. And see, that to me reflects this fixation on it's the building. Who cares what the size is if you have access to the same covenants and ordinances whereby we have a covenant connection with the Father and the Son?
We're so blessed to have temples. We'll have increasing numbers of temples as the church grows. But it's not the number, and it's not the location, and it's not the architecture. It's the ordinances inside.
Who cares what the size is? Who cares?
It's not the architecture. It's the ordinances inside. It's the ordinances inside.
It's the ordinances inside.
Yep. So thank you, Kulch, because none of us could say it any clearer. All of us growing up, we never heard that a large temple or a tall steeple or lighting had anything to do with what we were going to experience or what we did experience in the temple. So thank you.
Is there a reason? I'm sorry. Is there a reason no one played that last week, or any reason why someone can't play it tomorrow night?
Oh, they quote it all the time, and all the residents have it, and people mention it in
I'd
their
have a big screen
speeches.
TV, and I would play it on a 105-inch television at the front of the room.
They've got to be wired for sound there.
If any residents from Fairview are watching, or anyone on the town council, I can shoot you over a copy of that video if you think it would be useful.
Set the tone.
Yep,
oh yeah, stick it to them and show them that they're lying their asses off.
All right, so that's our Fairview update, and please, everybody, tune in tomorrow night at 5:30 for pre-show. I call it pre-show, and 6 p.m. Mountain Time for the meeting. I mean, this is really going to be it. This is the point where we're going to find out, can they arrive at something, or will there more likely, be a loss? What is going to happen? So this is going to be big.
The Thrilla in Manila.
All right. If nothing else, Rebecca, we'll jump to the next story. This is just one that came up in the Salt Lake Tribune this week. Class credit for serving an LDS mission. And you would think this would be Brigham Young University, but it's not. It's the University of Utah. In a move that's sparking both applause and debate, the University of Utah has announced that it will now offer class credit to students who have completed missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This policy change recognizes the skills and experiences gained during missionary service as valuable educational experiences. While supporters see this as a way to honor the dedication and growth achieved during missions, critics question whether religious service should translate into academic credit at a public institution. The university maintains that the decision aligns with its commitment to acknowledging diverse forms of experiential learning. I wonder how many credits I get for my life lived. Probably not any at all.
Hey, you used to manage a pawn store. That's got to be worth a few college credits.
I worked in a floor covering store, and I've run a podcast or been part of several of them over a decade. So you would think that might be worth at least a associate's degree at this point, but it's not. What do you guys think about the University of Utah giving Mormons college credit for serving a mission?
Rebecca? I feel like being a stay-at-home mom should get you, I don't know, a whole degree. You know what I mean? The jack of all trades that you have to be to do that. The most interesting part of these articles, I thought, is when they point blank asked the administrators or the people who came up with this, are you trying to appeal to LDS students? And they said, absolutely. So that's very interesting. They really are trying to gather more students at the U. And I don't know, maybe it's because the U has that reputation. Oh, you know, the U, BYU. I'm not sure, but it's not just missionaries, of course. It's, you know, Peace Corps or military. But like you said, Bill, there are all kinds of other ways to have experiences. So I'm not sure where you cut that off.
And there are things I understand. So one of the comments here, by the way, I got 30 credit hours in Portuguese at BYU for my Brazilian mission. Languages, that makes sense to
different. Me. Yeah.
Two young guys living in a house together, knocking on doors and getting rejected every day doesn't seem like it really gave you much in terms of real world experience. Unless you're going to go out and sell vinyl siding or shingles after you get home from your mission. So anyway, anything from you, RFM, that you want to say about this story?
Yeah, 30 credits is a lot, but that is the other thing that does come to mind, of course. And I went to Japan on my mission, and I learned Japanese as well as I could. And I came back to the States and went to the University of Texas at Austin and got some credits for some Japanese language. But then I had to have a little bit more for my degree, for my BA degree. And so I took a class within advanced, Japanese, which was like just a handful of people. It was rather informal, a very nice teacher. And I remember that all of us had to do a presentation at the end of the semester entirely in Japanese. And I treated the class and teacher to the first discussion, including the Joseph Smith story.
Well, there you go.
In Japanese.
Yes, I had a captive audience, and I was very, very missionary minded.
Yeah, I think it's 19 credits that you can get. I think they said that in the article at the U. You can already get that in a BYU, of course. And you're right, that's completely legitimate. And then you can take upper division. But yeah, it's very interesting because BYU doesn't do that.
Talking about going into a country or out and getting credit or getting it taken away, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, you've got our next story with immigration.
Yes.
Thank you. Here is an article from the Salt Lake Tribune, April 25th, 2025. Headline, caught up in clash over Trump's immigration crackdown, LDS bishops get guidance from their top leaders. First Presidency answers a key question. Can members be asked about their immigration status in temple interviews? As the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration presses on, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is reminding its bishops and other lay leaders that they are not to ask members about their immigration status in temple interviews. And I'm glad Peggy is really calling it out, because even though they're trying to do it without doing it, it's obvious what they're doing, and she's catching it. That position was reaffirmed in a letter this week from the faith's governing First Presidency to all general officers and local male authorities who conduct worthiness interviews with members desiring to participate in temple rituals. With enhanced, let's see, this is from the April 24th letter. signed by the first presidency when they weren't busy signing, letters changing the names of temples in Texas. With enhanced enforcement of immigration laws in various jurisdictions, we have received inquiries from priesthood leaders about temple recommend interview questions. It goes on. We remind those conducting temple recommend interviews that under established policy, local leaders are to ask only the temple recommend questions as currently constituted. The prescribed questions cover a range of beliefs and behaviors, including members' faith in Jesus Christ, their attendance at church meetings, their payment of tithes, and their adherence to the faith's word of wisdom health code. There is no question about immigration status. Authorities should not add or remove any requirements, the letter continues. However, they may adapt the questions to the age and circumstances of the member. Not exactly sure what that means. It sounds like a potential door waiting to be opened. The first presidency acknowledged that members sometimes have questions during these interviews. The priesthood leader may explain basic gospel principles. He may also help members understand the temple recommend questions if needed, the letter says. However, he should not present his personal beliefs, preferences, or interpretations as church doctrine or policy. This reminder echoes the church's long-standing position on immigration. In the aftermath of Donald Trump's January promise of mass deportations, for example, the Utah-based Faith waded delicately into the debate. It issued a news release proclaiming its obedience to the law and reiterating principles that guide the church's approach. And so I dug that one out of the archives. This is from January 30th of 2025, earlier this year. Church reaffirms immigration principles, love, law, and family unity. This is official church news release. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has reiterated principles and communicated guidelines to local leaders in the United States regarding immigration issues. As disciples of Jesus Christ, the following principles guide the church's approach. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints obeys the law. That's number one. Number two, we follow Jesus Christ by loving our neighbors. The Savior taught that the meaning of neighbor includes all of God's children. Number three, we seek to provide basic food and clothing as our capacity allows to those in need, regardless of their immigration status. We are especially concerned about keeping families together. And this is the church statement continued from January. The guidance closely follows statements. They're actually talking about themselves here. The guidance closely follows statements made previously on these issues, which are available on the church website. The Office of General Counsel, it's like there's another helpline that bishops have that's hinted at here. The Office of General Counsel has created guidelines to help local leaders comply with federal laws that criminalize harboring, transporting, or encouraging undocumented immigrants to remain in the United States. The Office of General Counsel also carefully tracks legal developments to ensure local outreach and area-initiated humanitarian activities are appropriate. Local leaders should be in contact with the Office of General Counsel for further information. So there's another helpline for another legal issue, talking to more lawyers. I wonder if there's more than these. Any comments from anybody so far?
I think it's interesting that they talk about don't amend the questions, don't say something. I've had so many bishops interviews where they ask me things like, you don't drink Coke, do you? Or you don't see R-rated movies, do you? I mean, bishops do this. They do amend things. And I also wonder, what would a bishop do if a person volunteered that information to them because they were feeling conflicted? I'm actually illegal. What would a bishop do then? I guess they'd have to call that hotline.
That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what they're told on the other side. I guess they're going to look up the law and they're going to give whatever answer is going to protect the church the best, I would expect. Don't ask, don't tell. We're back here again, aren't we? This letter, this continues with the article by Peggy Fletcher Stack. This letter is clearly consistent with church policy. Charles Cuck, a Latter-day Saint immigration attorney in Atlanta, said Friday. He just appears sort of at the end of the article. to give an opinion. When I served as a bishop of a Spanish union, Cluck says, I'm sorry, I would never have even thought to ask this question. I am very glad it has been emphasized in these difficult times. Okay. And this is the letter from which they were quoting, the April 24th, 2025 First Presidency letter, signed by all three. And that is a close-up version. It was basically all of it quoted in the article, at least all the important stuff, but I had enlarged it over here on this slide so it could be legible. I also thought I need to look up the earlier article, though not dated, right? The basic article on immigration on the church's website, because I think it's important to include this if we're trying to gauge where the church is standing. And I think the church is pretty much covering its bases and saying something on every issue all the way around the clock here, if you include this statement. As a worldwide church dealing with many complex issues across the globe, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints promotes broad foundational principles that have worldwide application. We follow Jesus Christ by loving our neighbors. The Savior taught that the meaning of neighbor includes all of God's children in all places at all times. We recognize an ever-present need to strengthen families. Families are meant to be together. Forced separation of working parents from their children weakens families and damages society. I give the look about the line, families are meant to be together, because I think as that should not be stated as all-encompassing there. Some families should not be together. We acknowledge that every nation has the right to enforce its laws and secure its borders. All persons subject to a nation's laws are accountable for their acts in relation to them. Public officials should create and administer laws that reflect the best of our aspirations as a just and caring society. Such laws will properly balance love for neighbors, family cohesion, and the observance of just and enforceable laws. So I think that no matter what your take is on the issue, the church is on your side. All right, let's see if there's anything else. Oh, I read it off that I forgot that I had actually taken and copied it and pasted and made another slide that was easier to read. Okay, that is it for that story. What do you think?
It's a political story, so I'm going to just stay out of that one.
Yeah, it's a hot button issue.
There's people on both sides who would, yeah. I do think this. The church is in a hard place. It is... much of its membership inside the United States are conservative followers who, on one hand, probably to some large degree support people being deported out. And the church itself has tried to maintain a much more liberal point of view on that issue, welcoming folks in, and has for about 2 decades now. And so I think they're sort of caught in the middle and just trying to stay out of it, essentially.
Is that what you were thinking, Rebecca?
Yep, I am. I think it's an issue that is so multifaceted, but the thing to remember is it involves people, right? And so when it involves people, nothing is as clear cut as anybody would want to make it. These are real lives and real people.
Well, based on the church's past activities, I would suspect that my beginning thesis for the church acting in the way it has been that you described, Bill, would be because it's in the church's best interest.
Yeah, they will suffer if they take a strong position one way or the other. Yeah, so to be more neutral and just to have it stay out of interviews, let it not be part of Sunday church, let this all deal with itself in that public arena if things happen, and not to have church leaders going out of their way one way or the other. So, yep. Well, if that's it, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, we'll go to the next story.
It is. And I advanced the slide to the beginning of the next story.
Excellent. All right. So this is another Salt Lake Tribune article, Mormon Land, why being colorblind isn't an option if you want to root out racism. This is David Noyce and Peggy Fletcher Stack. This came out on April 23rd. So about 5 days ago. I'll just note here, in a recent episode of the Mormon Land podcast, Molly Bonner, a Black Latter-day Saint, filmmaker, and Grammy-winning songwriter, discussed the LDS Church's ongoing efforts to confront racism within its ranks. Bonner acknowledged recent steps such as the new church webpage, urging members to abandon prejudice and actively speak out against racism. But he emphasized that these measures are just the beginning. Bonner advocates for a deeper reckoning with the church's historical and cultural legacy of racism, suggesting that members need to engage in honest self-reflection and dialogue. He also highlighted the role of inclusive art and music in fostering healing and understanding within the faith community. Bonner's message is clear. Addressing racism requires more than policy changes. It demands a heartfelt commitment to change and unity. And sort of like the last issue, the church, for whatever reasons, it doesn't want to step outside of a line that it has created. And what I mean by that is the church really will have to deal with this issue forever until it apologizes, until it says it just got it all wrong, the ban itself wasn't from God, and leaders just messed up. It will constantly, every so often, a few times every year, it will have to deal with what people say around this issue. I will say, the church has made progress. It has done things such as working with the NAACP. It has put out articles, both in its periodicals and on its website, asking members to get past their own racism. But until the church's leaders get past theirs, this is going to continue to be a sticking point. I will also say, so long as the top 15 leaders are all of a color other than African or African American, people of color, black skin, they're going to have this issue continue with them as well. And so if I were them, and I'm not, if I were them, I would put a person of color into the top 15 as soon as possible. I would also apologize, because then I get to move on. And why would I not want to do that? At this point, every member of the church realizes that church leaders have made serious mistakes, and nobody is just clinging to the fact that they couldn't possibly get this issue wrong, because most members now recognize they got this issue wrong. Your thoughts, Rebecca and RFM?
I was going to mention that my co-host Landon and I attended a lecture at the University of Utah called All Are Alike Unto God, and it featured several different authors. One was our good friend, Matt Harris, who, of course, wrote Second Class Saints. If you haven't read this, it's also on Audible. This is a pivotal book. But the other authors were, if I can read this, Alice Faulkner Birch, who wrote My Lord, He Calls Me, and W. Paul Reeve, who wrote not only the Gospel Topics essays on this topic, but he wrote that little book, Race in the Priesthood. You can get it at Deseret Book. They have the different Gospel Topic essays kind of expanded into a little book you can buy yourself. It's called Let's Talk About, right? I don't know if you can see my screen. Let's Talk About. Yeah. So it was absolutely fascinating. And like you said, Bill, the church is really trying to reconcile everything that's happened. And it was so interesting. Of course, it was fascinating to hear Matt Harris talk, because he's got the receipts, he's got the real deal, he's got the meeting minutes, he can tell us pretty much what happened as far as the priesthood ban. But to hear Paul Reeve, W. Paul Reeve talk was interesting, because he said that he had been asked to come up with the Gospel Topic essay, right? And the original idea was first there would be a paragraph on the topic, real quick. You could just go to it and read this paragraph. Then there was going to be a medium size, couple paragraphs. And then there was going to be a scholarly multi-page article with footnotes, the whole deal, right? And they finally ended up scrapping the paragraph and the huge scholarly article for just what we have now. And he had no control after he submitted it as to what happened to it. I don't know, editors, maybe the first presidency themselves, but he even said that the conclusions that he drew in his original essay, or, the paragraph, the longer one and the middle one, they were not exactly shown in this final product. So you do have a lot of faithful LDS who understand the issues, and they're trying to get information out. It's a different story when you put something on the church website, you know, and you need this kind of answer that's going to kind of make everybody feel okay. But boy, it was, I don't know if that is, it was through Dialogue. I don't know if it's available. Maybe go to Dialogue and look on their website, but it was fascinating just to hear these different perspectives, and almost everybody there was faithful. I was stunned that Landon and I got recognized a couple times. I was like, oh dear, but they seemed really positive about things. But these are faithful people, a packed auditorium, trying to understand where we have been, where we are now, and where we can go in the future. And the consensus was there needs to be an apology. And this is a room full of faithful members. So it was fascinating.
Yes. So I'm guessing Paul didn't say what conclusions he had in his original essay that did not survive the editing process.
He did go into that, you know, and he said the same thing, kind of apology and kind of, you know, it was, and then it was funny because, you know, Matt, he has some different opinions and he was saying things and people were kind of laughing uncomfortably, you know, so it was kind of a supercharged meeting, but really interesting.
One other little, go ahead, RFM.
I just because I did write a blog 12 years ago when this thing came out saying, where's the apology?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And going through a review of this essay. And it's just like, where is it, guys? Come on.
Yeah. And that's difficult to do with Oak still maintaining the church's position that the ban itself is from God, even if the theories around it have been disavowed. I'll just note, I was out at a furniture store this past weekend and met a couple. They were he was a listener for years to you and I's work, RFM. And I know I'm probably not doing the grammar on that right, but she was noting she hadn't been a listener, but she was right in the middle of her faith deconstruction.
Do I know these people?
No, I don't think so. I didn't know them, but I talked to them for a bit. She was right in the middle of her faith deconstruction, and she noted that she was watching closely the Jared Halverson stuff going on. And she said she really enjoyed the conversation that took place with Halverson and the sisters in the church. And I wanted, I didn't want to rip any table legs out from under her. I wanted her to be able to go through this entire process that in a way that was healthy and at her pace. But I wanted to note to her, I said, is that the first time you'd ever seen a conversation with women inside the church speaking their mind and being vulnerable and saying what they were upset about in a way that didn't look to appease the man in the room? And she said, yeah. And I think it's much like this issue, where the moment you let the cat out of the bag, the moment that women in the church can start hearing other women in the church speak like grown-ass adults, and the moment that people in the church have to confront the fact that prophets, seers, and revelators got this race thing terribly wrong, you can't go back. There's no going back. You will only water it down more and more and be more and more honest. And you may, and it seems like the only real reason to do it at a really slow pace is to allow each generation of leaders to die without having to confront their own mistakes. Anyway, there's that. I think that's by the way, I think it's the real reason why a generation must pass before the church revisits an issue and gives a little more ground, is so that generation of leaders can die without having to admit they were wrong.
Well, I don't have the live chat on, but I'm picturing all these mic drops.
Yeah. But that's all I've got for this story. Anything else from you two? Okay.
No, great story.
I'll put this back up. And Rebecca, I believe this is you.
Of course, we, with all these heavy topics, we have to do a little bit of entertainment. I've been trying to put this one in for a couple weeks here, but something always supersedes it. Season 2 trailer of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. This is coming up. Here they all are. They've taken off their blue coats and they're wearing white dresses underneath, whatever symbolism you get out of that. But the new season is starting. This was a runaway breakout hit when it first came out last spring. So it says for the upcoming season of season 2, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, a new cast member, Miranda McWhorter, also known as Miranda Hope, she's up there in the right-hand corner, is joining the show. And she was actually part of the Mom Talk group that did the soft swinging scandal that inspired the series. Now, we reported on that, I think, way back early on. But if you're not familiar with where this whole series came from, up in my neck of the woods, there was a group of some LDS, some not, anyway, a group of friends and moms that were putting dance videos on TikTok called Mom Talk, right? And Taylor Frankie Paul let it slip one day in a TikTok video that the whole group was falling apart and her marriage was falling apart because they were soft swinging, which means, you know, consensual non-monogamy, basically. And everybody went ballistic. It was all over the news because, again, you know, how exciting. Mormons, wait, what, they do that? And all the girls are very cute, of course. And so it spawned this series. I'm sure that producers went, okay, these girls, there's something going on. But the series didn't have anybody else that was involved in the soft swinging up until season 2. So now we have Miranda. And so I think that's going to be one of the topics maybe that's brought up a little bit more since we now know that there are people that are in I knew someone in the group, believe it or not.
Really?
I did. Yeah. I
How
told
did you know
you.
them?
I've got my finger on the pulse of everything that happens up here in Utah County. So
Well, Miranda McWhorter, that's got to be a screen name, right?
probably. I will say that the person that I knew was connected to a higher up church official, which is probably why they didn't want to be on the series. And I'll say
Really?
no
What
more.
higher up church official?
I'm not going to say. A
Don't
family
protect
member.
them.
So no, I'm not going to say.
Okay.
Anyway, and that was a long time ago. So, all right. So there they are. And it says 3 members of the cast, since we saw them last in season 1, are pregnant. Oh my gosh. Can you believe it? That's amazing. And they've been on different talk shows and people are just staring at them like, wow, you know, because you've got all these young girls and they're all pregnant.
Rebecca,
yes.
it sounds to me like the amazing thing is that more of them aren't pregnant.
That could possibly be true. Yeah. So Jennifer Affleck, Michaela Matthews, and Macy Neely are all currently pregnant and excited to grow their families. So we'll see about that in season 2. Season 2 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives premieres on Hulu on Thursday, May 15th, and all 10 episodes drop at once. And if you're like me, you just need to it's like taking cough syrup. You just have to do it. You just have to watch it and then
So you
look
didn't
back
like
and
it?
No, I did like it. I mean, like maybe isn't the right word. You just can't not watch
hated
it. Plus, I have to watch it so I can report on it. For professional reasons, I had to spend an entire day and eat an entire pizza watching Secret Lives
This
of
doesn't
Mormon
sound
Wives.
like a really good recommendation from you, Rebecca.
No, everyone's going to watch it. You have to, because you're just curious how they interweave Mormonism into it. I mean, last season there were baby blessings and then they were at Chippendales. I mean, it was really just this, you know, all over the place mixture that was fascinating. The problem I have with the show is that I can't recognize anybody. They all look alike. And with the new season and the new picture, I can't tell who's who anymore. Like,
okay, that's what I was thinking too. And I was just wondering if it was me.
no, it's me too. And I'm usually really good at it. I watched all seasons before I podcasted of all the Real Housewives, all of them. I don't want to admit it, but I did. I could recognize everyone, but on this, I have trouble.
It's like how all the Barbie dolls look the
look.
same no matter what their profession is.
That's what I'm saying. It's very strange. But if you can't get enough of these girls, if you can't get enough, there's actually a live event that's coming up. They're planning their very first live show in Vegas. This is going to be on June 7th at 10 p.m. at the Venetian Palazzo Theater in the Las Vegas Strip. And you can get tickets to this, which is amazing. If anybody wants to go see them,
What are they going to do?
What?
What are they going to do? Do you
Well,
know?
I'm going to funny you should ask. I'm going to tell you what they're going to do. The live event will feature 6 cast members from the unscripted Hulu series. You've got Taylor Frankie Paul, Michaela Matthews, Macy J. Neely, Jennifer Affleck, Jesse, I can never pronounce her name, Negatakura, and Layla Taylor. And they will include commentary, roundtable chats, interactive games, confessions from fans read live by the cast, and more, according to the announcement. It costs $45 plus fees to get tickets if it's not already sold out. So anyway, you can just probably Google that if you're interested in going and seeing these lovely ladies in person. And if you can't see them in person, May 15th coming up in just a couple weeks, you can binge watch on Hulu The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And I don't know, when the first season came out, do you guys remember the statement the church put out?
Yes, I
It was
do.
a statement about that and heretic, where they didn't name anything specifically, but they said, you know, people represent the church in a way that it's not really us. So I don't know, now that this show is like the #1 show, like it is crazy popular, if they're going to have to put out another statement. I don't know.
So I think, Bill, By the way, thank you for that story, Rebecca. I think that's a great idea. Bill, Mormonism After Dark. What do you think about us reading confessions from fans, read live by the cast, and more?
Now, that actually is a really good idea. I'm not kidding. Post Secret. Have you heard of that site before? Where people send in
No.
postcards with confessions. Just go to Post Secrets. You know, sometimes there are LDS ones that you come across, but people just unburden themselves on a postcard. They mail it in and they are displayed on this website. And some of them are very dark secrets. So it's
Really dark secrets? Like what?
Very dark. I don't know. Just very, very dark. You know, like people write in, my husband thinks the baby is his, you know, something like that. I mean, that's not dark, but, you know, just very intense, revealing things that you would never say to anybody else.
RFM's on his third reading right now. He's reading postsecrets.com.
We've lost him now on the show because he's off on a tangent.
We could make it like Penthouse Forum.
But seriously, it is like Penthouse Forum. For those of you that know what that is, that is a really good
I'm
idea.
kind of surprised you know what it is, Rebecca.
I was a librarian. Do you know that BYU had a subscription to Playboy? Because in the past, especially, some articles were only in Playboy. Some really important people would have been interviewed, like judges and things like that. So the subscription was not pictures. It was on microfilm so that you could read the articles, but heaven forbid there was no centerfold.
So you got to read that Jimmy Carter had lusted after women in his heart.
That's what I'm saying. Those really important tell-all articles that were in Playboy. Yep, that's it. So
somebody asked if in this image if they're wearing garments or not.
You know what? It's a good question. Yeah, no, they talk about garments on the show. They do, and some of them more obviously are. But with the new tank top garment, who's to say? I can't tell anymore.
There you go.
I don't know.
What are we going to do when we can't tell who the righteous women are, Bill?
It's a problem.
I guess we're only left to make assumptions. I don't know. What are we to do, RFM, if we don't know who the righteous women are anymore?
Oh my gosh.
Well, there are different
something to judge people by just at a glance.
There are different definitions of modesty. I've told this story before, how I was in a dressing room at Kohl's. There was a mother and daughter in the dressing room next to me, and they were trying on shoes, interesting, in a dressing room. And the mother kept saying, those are not modest shoes. Those aren't modest enough. And the daughter was going, oh, come on, Mom. No, those shoes aren't modest. And I was just dying to like peek under and see what was considered a not modest shoe. I have no idea.
Probably stiletto heels on a 7-year-old.
Could be. If anyone in the chat knows, I've always been curious. What's a not modest shoe?
All right. Anything else from you on this story?
Nope. I dare you to segue modest shoes into the next story, though. I don't think it can be done.
If anybody can do it, Bill can.
I know Bill's really good.
Well, if anybody's wearing their walking shoes in Wyoming, they're walking right out of the church. And we can see that in our next story. So this is also a Salt Lake Tribune article. This came out the day after my last one. This was on April 24th. This was by David Noyce as well. Latest from Mormon land, only one U.S. state saw its LDS membership decline. We talked to you just either last week or the week before on the Mormon newscast about the data that had come out in new research. And it had pointed to the fact that the nuns leaving religion and people leaving the LDS church, that had plateaued and in some cases had started going back the other direction. This comes from their data. They're getting this from, I think it's ldschurchgrowth.blogspot.com. This is the website that is often referred to for growth information, growth or decline information about the church. And on this article here, I'll just, this is the article that they got it from. But in this week's Mormon newscast, we spotlight the latest LDS church membership trends across the United States. According to recent reports, Wyoming was the only state to experience a decline in Latter-day Saint membership in 2024.
Wonder why.
With a modest decrease of 0.26%. This is a significant improvement compared to previous years where multiple states saw declines. Notably, California, after nearly a decade of decreases, recorded a slight uptick of 0.01 in membership. Meanwhile, states like Washington, D.C., which isn't a state, but that's what the article said. So 3.8% increase. Kentucky, 3.48% increase. New York, 3.46% increases. These led and growth percentages. Overall, the United States LDS membership grew by 0.8%, reaching a total of 6,929,956 members. Overall, the U.S. LDS membership grew by 0.8%, reaching a total of 6,929,956. Now, I'll just note, they are speaking of members on the rolls, which we don't ever really get that data. The church doesn't share it. This is the LDS Growth website guessing, educated guesses, based on the best information that's available. This is, I would say that they do a similar job to the Widow's Mite report, which also doesn't have hard data to go on, but has to pull data from multiple places to try to put an educated, informed guess together. I think both of these do a good job. I'll just note there were 5 intriguing insights from the article. Wyoming's unique position, despite the dedication of a new temple in Casper, Wyoming. Wyoming was the sole state to register a membership decline, highlighting the complex dynamics of church growth there. California turnaround after consistent declines. We mentioned this since 2014. California is finally seeing an uptick, again, based on this website's data and research. Number 3, growth leaders. We talked about this. Washington, D.C., Kentucky, and New York emerged as the top 3. Now, the 2 we didn't go into, improved national trends. The reduction in states experiencing membership declines from 5 in 2023 to just 1 in 2024 indicates a positive national trend for the church. So the church, whatever changes it's made, whether those have had the impact or not, the church can at least say it's doing things to try to stop the bleeding and to some degree has succeeded. And then number 5, legal developments. This was also mentioned in the article. The LDS Church successfully defended against 2 significant lawsuits. We covered both of those here. RFM covered those, with courts dismissing both cases, reinforcing the church's financial practices. Again, they get to claim that because those cases were dismissed, that the church, there wasn't any grounds of a financial abuse by the church, and it gets to paint a story as if it's the good guy. And I think this, along with other things, plays well both in and out of the church. And for whatever reason, I think we'll be sort of figuring this out over the next decade or so, as this trend either goes back the other direction or sort of stays where it is, or we see increased growth. We'll all be trying to figure out what it is that's causing that. Any thoughts from the 2 of you? What do you think of? How do you feel about coming to this moment in time where the church seems to have stopped the bleeding? I don't hear you, RFM.
I was trying to keep myself from interrupting Rebecca, and I kept myself from interrupting myself. My 6th intriguing insight from this article is I don't believe any of this. This is all malarkey. This is not what is happening out there, okay? I can look around as well as the next guy. Don't tell me that it's raining when you're peeing on my leg, okay? All I'm telling you is this. Ultimately, this is based on statistics that come from the church. The church has a vested interest, as they have shown time and again, in showing that they are growing, even if they're not. And therefore, I think it was just earlier in this very show that I said that you can't trust a Mormon when they're trying to advance the position of the church.
So the church is a shower that it's a grower.
It's a shower that it's a grower. And I think when you're falling so far, when you move up a little bit, it's easy to look like you're growing if you've fallen far before that, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of looking at the chat. They're talking about the growth numbers in Catholicism in Africa. And I reported last week, if you remember, just, how church membership in Africa, they're saying, oh, we're almost up to 1 million. And then we looked at all the other Christian denominations, and I did leave out Catholicism. I didn't have that data, but now with all the attention on the Pope, I think it was 7 million people had converted to Catholicism. So those numbers are growing for Christianity all over, and the LDS Church, around 1 million. So it is interesting, but they're always going to want to look. They push that. The growth in Africa is incredible, and all the temples that they're building there. And in Wyoming, if you look at number 1, I think there's 3 temples now. Of course, we follow Coda, Wyoming all the time quite closely. It's interesting. Temple growth no longer reflects at all population or growth or decline.
3 temples in poor Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I don't mean poor, financially or
yeah,
anything,
no, I know.
Poor as far as Mormon population.
Yeah.
We've got 3 temples in that state.
I think there's 3 because there's Cody, which, they're constructing with very bright lights, the poor residents around the clock. And then they have Casper, and I think it's Star Valley in Wyoming, or is that Montana? I'll have to consult my temple whiteboard. It's this entire wall over here on my.
Well, we wouldn't want anybody to have to drive for more than 2 hours to get to a temple.
Oh, well, it's very dangerous. Yeah.
So, Bill?
Yeah, that's the end of that story. And so now, let's see.
We have one more. I think it's my final one.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Awesome. Okay, this is another really interesting thing that happened. So last Monday, which was the 21st, right? It was April 21st. I covered what's happening with the Vail School District. The church is trying to build a seminary building there on school district land, right? So we covered this on Monday, the 21st. And the different issues, just the church versus state is basically what it was. Parents got wind of it. It had already passed. Now, when I reported it, I thought there were only 2 confirmed members of the school board that were LDS. I have been talking to some people there in the Vail School District, and one gentleman has told me there are 4 members actually on the school board. So, of course, you can see this church and state, and the parents are concerned. And this is everything that I reported on last week. And the school superintendent had said that while informal conversations were happening off and on for 13 years about having this happen, that the school district would build, the church could build on school district land, then it would lease it to the church. They would use it for a period of time. It wasn't until 7 or 8 months ago when, it really moved forward. The proposal moved forward and was placed on the agenda for discussion at a public meeting. No one saw it. Nobody caught it, right? So nobody was there, and it simply passed. Then there's kind of a watchdog parent, as there always is in every school district, who put it on their Facebook page. And that's when the what kind of hit the fan, right? Where the parents said, what in the heck is this? We didn't know anything about this. And of course, their concerns were things like, how does this work? What kind of teachers or leaders from this church will be on our school campus? Will our children interact with them? Will there be missionaries on, these are all legitimate questions. They have no idea what the seminary building will be used for. So like I said, we talked about this last week. So even a petition. And of course, a lot of people got involved from various secular organizations. We're going to talk about that. So we also talked about how typically does a seminary building get built. And there are 2 different ways. Direct purchase. The church will purchase the land directly from a private individual or a business, just like any other real estate transaction. It tends to be very close to the school. They'll just buy a little piece of property, and then they can have release time seminary there for the kids. Another thing that they do is a collaboration with school boards. So in some cases, the board will acquire land and sell a specific parcel to the church. This happens in Utah all the time. Like a school's being built and they're like, hey, yeah, we got the parcel for you. But, they sell it to them. It is not on school district property. That's the difference. This allows the church to establish a seminary building near the school without necessarily being on school property, right? Because of church and state issues. And this is what the parents and the secular organizations like Secular Arizona and Freedom from Religion wrote a cease and desist letter and said, this cannot happen. So all this is boiling around. This is all the stuff that we talked about and I reported on the 21st. And then suddenly, I'm not saying this means anything or if it's a coincidence, but the day after we reported this story on, I've now coined TMN, the Mormon newscast, right? After we talked about this story on TMN, oh my gosh, the whole thing was scrapped. The church bowed out. So this is what it says. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this happened, let me tell you, this happened like an hour before their board meeting on Tuesday night, which would have been the next night after the newscast. They received notification that the church just said, no, we're not going to do it. Never mind. So it says, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints responded, we are grateful to the Vail School District for their efforts to provide opportunities for our students. We regret that at this time we will not continue in negotiations for the seminary building. We recognize our right to practice our religion in public spaces. They always say that we recognize our right, but we do not want our efforts to be a distraction to the community and the district.
You have no right to have your building on school property. That is not subsumed within your right to practice your religion in public spaces. So quit pretending like it is.
Yeah, really, to cause distraction. I mean, we're talking parents are up in arms, members of the school district, these watchdog groups who watch church versus state. This is really escalated. And so the church, I understand why they would pull back. Now, I'm sure they were planning to pull back. I'm sure it wasn't our story, but we did report on it. So anyway, I can think what I can think.
I want to jump in here and just say the church could say the same thing here in Fairview, but they choose not to.
Yep.
We're grateful to the Fairview town for their efforts to provide an opportunity for us to build our temple. We regret at this time we will not continue in negotiations. We recognize our right to practice our religion in public spaces, but do not want our effort to be a distraction to the community in the town.
Yeah, they could. And that's why this story in tandem with the temple is very interesting to see the similarities, the church versus state, and then to see the different ways that they're reacting. So in a Facebook post, the Vail School District said, we received formal written notice from the church indicating their decision to exercise their contractual right to terminate the agreement. In short, this action by the church brings the lease and donation agreement to a close. So it's done. They're saying absolutely not. It's over. Now there was
before you move on.
Yes.
You don't get to move on. Absolutely fantastic. Not once, but twice last week. Oh my gosh. You brought the minions of Satan to their knees.
Something. No, I have been following this story for a while, and I was kind of waiting for it to come kind of to a head and see, are they going to, go ahead with it? What are the parents going to say? What's the district going to say? But yeah, I was really surprised that this all of a sudden kind of out of the blue happened, because I thought they might, try to stick it to the man and try to do it. But
I hate to say this, Rebecca. I think I've earned it with that compliment. But the thing about this is why you cannot put Mormons. This is what happens when you put Mormons in public office.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's interesting you would say that, because the one gentleman, after I ran the story on Monday, I had a couple people contact me from the area who'd been watching it. That usually happens, and it's fun to find out other stuff going on. And this one particular gentleman who's not LDS, and he basically said, can I give you a phone call? Because I just really want to understand what's happening. I don't know why this group is acting this way. What is this religion? And I saw that you had done a story on it. And so he said that people are stunned and shocked that their school board would pass this without any public input. And he said, so interesting to me, it's almost like they're working more for their church than for our school in their elected office. I know, it was so cute of him, but I think a lot of the parents have realized that. And that is very disturbing to a lot of people when they come across that for the first time. Of course, I live in Utah, so that's a way of life here. But
right. And Rebecca, based on the story that you just reported, I mean, it's not just giving Mormons a majority in anything, including a school board, but the church was in negotiations with them, with the school district. And so don't try and tell me there weren't communications going back and forth, even maybe 13 years before. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that a tacit admission between the church and between the church and the school board to build a seminary building on public school property? And this is the kind of stuff. And I think the reason you can't trust Mormons, whether they're in government or in the church.
Yeah. Well, again, we bring up Senator Smith, right? And I did tell this gentleman I was talking to about that story, and he was horrified. So I did my missionary work. But, there is a reason that they thought it would be okay. And again, it was going to be a lease for 10 years, and they would have access to the building sometimes, so I can see why they might have thought without thinking that it would be a good idea, but these secular organizations jump all over this kind of stuff. So it says the controversial plans by the Southern Arizona School District to construct a facility for use as a seminary by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have been scrapped. On April 22nd, the day after the newscast, the Vail School District announced that the LDS Church had decided to terminate its contract with the district, which serves a rural community southeast of Tucson. The plan had called for a 1,300 square foot building, so just your standard, smaller seminary building, on the Cienega High School campus located certain place. Under the proposed 10-year agreement, the school would have primarily served the school district, with the church scheduled to use it several hours on weekdays. So they're saying it would have been the school district's building, but the church would lease, to be able to use it to serve the students. Now, if we go on from there and we find out what did the school district say about why they thought this would be okay. Caruth, he's the school superintendent, but the board, as I believe it, hires the superintendent. So, he kind of has to go along with, if there really are 4 members of the LDS Church on a 5-member board, that's pretty incredible. And I don't know that for sure. That's just what this one gentleman who lives in the school district told me. I confirmed that 2 were. I was able to confirm the 2. Anyway, so he assured parents at the meeting, because after this came to light, then they had to have another meeting, right? Because parents are like, what the heck is happening here? That the agreement between the district and the church complied with both church and federal, both state and federal law. So he's saying we can totally do this. Students who sought to attend seminary would be able to do so during their free period and would not be excused from their scheduled school time. That's important too. Caruth said. The district superintendent also said there would not be permanent religious decorations in the building, because that was another question I think that parents would have. So if I use the building after hours for some kind of extracurricular with my students, will I have to see, come follow me, paraphernalia, CTR on the wall?
Well, they still will. It just won't be part of the architecture. In other words, it's not permanent.
Yeah, it's not permanent. Yeah. But again, so many questions, and the questions about, what's a seminary teacher? Who's this person? Are they vetted? They're on school grounds. Will my student interact with them? Will my student just kind of follow his LDS friends where they go next on the free period? Hey, come over here, come to this building. Will that happen? Lots of concerns like that. So what do the pro-secular organizations say? And this is why we should all get involved in things. This is really great. The nonprofit advocacy group Secular Arizona stated that it had warned the district about the legality of the seminary plans. Their challenges against the building began after the district and the church reached that now canceled agreement. And that's when they sent a cease and desist letter. This would have blurred the lines between church and state in a deeply inappropriate way, said Diane Post, legal director for Secular Arizona, in a statement. This is a public high school, not a platform for religious proselyting. And again, this is from an article in an Arizona paper. The Wisconsin-based nonprofit Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I believe that Bill Maher is associated with this in some way, joined Secular Arizona in demanding that the district terminate its agreement with the church. So they're asking the school district to terminate it. And the school district didn't do that. It was the other way around. The church, I think, said, oops, getting too hot. Got to jump out of this frying pan. Arguing that public schools cannot provide resources benefiting churches' religious classes. To do so would be against the Constitution, the Freedom from Religion insisted. So that was their stance. And then again, the statement from the church just says, thank you to the school district for your efforts to provide the opportunities. We regret at this time we will not continue in negotiations. And again, we recognize our rights that we could have done it.
It makes me mad every time you say that.
Yeah, but we're just not going to do it.
Niagara Falls?
Exactly. Now, here's the most interesting part that this gentleman told me. So could this have happened before somewhere else in Arizona? Apparently, there is another school district where this has been going on. The building was built and it is happening. And I believe these organizations are looking at that. So, we will stay tuned. We don't know exactly what's happening there, but according to this gentleman I talked to, this is the case. They have found another school district where there is on school property an operating seminary building.
Ruh-roh, Raggy. Is this closer to Mesa?
Yeah, I'm not going to say because I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts and stuff, but apparently something's in the works, and these watchdog groups are definitely going to look at this to see if this has happened before.
Are you going to leave us hanging like this?
Huh?
Are you going to leave us hanging like this?
Well, I don't know any details except for that they seem to have found a place where for the last 5 years this has been happening.
That's all you know?
What?
That's all you know. I thought you were teasing maybe for your Mormonish episode tomorrow night.
No, I know where it is. But I'm just not going to say. So I have to, hold some things close. So
it seems like the church has people looking at it, over it, watching it in all kinds of arenas at this point.
Yeah.
Financial arenas, temple spaces, public school system grounds. It seems like the church can't do anything anymore that runs counter to ethics and the rules without it getting its hand slapped.
Yep, I think
has 1,000 eyes.
Exactly. Awareness is everywhere. And this story, it seems like a small little story, but there are other podcasters that are picking up on this and, talking to people on the ground. And so keep an eye out, for more coverage on this because it is really interesting. Then I had one last little thing before we end. I have talked about this film created by BYU, people who went to BYU previously, A Long Way from Heaven. It details everything that happened at BYU, from lighting the Y to the protest to the musket talk to taking out the prohibition of same-sex romantic behavior from the honor code and then putting it back in. The film is about 2 years ago is when they finished it, and it's been going around to film festivals. And finally, it won a lot of awards. I can say that it's on YouTube. Anybody can watch it for free anytime. Even Mormonish appeared a couple times in it. And it's just incredible. Sit down and watch it with Kleenex. It's absolutely amazing. It's called A Long Way from Heaven. And it's all about BYU in the last 5 or 6 years. And it's just this little microcosm, I think, of the larger church. But this is a powerful, incredible film that I've talked about, I think 3 or 4 times on the newscast. I think broke it when they were first starting it. So it's now available on YouTube, A Long Way from Heaven. Please, everybody, watch this and share it with your friends. It is absolutely incredible. So that's my little plug there. And that's all I have.
Rebecca, thank you. It is amazing with all these eyes watching the church in all these respects. It is astonishing how much dirty shit the church is up to.
Yep, that's it.
Before we exit the show, we always try to give everyone a chance to talk about what they're working on. So with that, Rebecca, what do you got going tomorrow night?
Yeah, tomorrow night is just going to be replacing our Mormonish episode because, good heavens, can you imagine if we released a Mormonish episode against the live stream of the town council? It's not going to happen. So that is our Mormonish episode for tomorrow night. Remember, 5:30 pre-show and then 6 o'clock the meeting. But I will very quickly say, as I reach over here, in the Good Book Club, we're on to our new book for May. Our meeting is on the 18th, so we don't, interfere with Mother's Day. Look at this, The Dawn of Everything. This is quite the book. It is amazing. It's by David Graeber and David Wengrow. We're going to have this meeting virtual on May 18th. So if anybody wants to grab this, I think it's like 26 hours on Audible. It is a ponderous book, but it is incredible. So anyway, anybody want to read, shoot me a note. I'll send you a link. It's on May 18th. So that's what's going on with this.
Does it bring it up to the present?
No, it's mostly the Neolithic period and hunters and gatherers. Like you never understood how sophisticated they were. Pre-Adamites, right? You covered that, Bill, didn't you? Was it last week or the week before? This kind of research and scholarship blows that out of the water. I mean, it's really a big problem for the church. The more information we get about, Neanderthals, Denisovians, all of that, it just blows everything out of the water. So
that's because they were only recently descended from Adam.
That's exactly.
They still had that civilization.
They did. That's right. Or I've heard of people before Adam had no soul, no spirit. There's all kinds of workarounds for it. But the bottom line is research like this, it blows it all out of the water.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you're talking about pre-Adamites as if these guys are leading up to Adam, which was one theory, which is proposed or espoused by Hugh Nibley.
Yeah, and no
others,
death,
right?
no death. And now we know,
Right.
like I said, it's, sorry,
As
science is awesome.
As opposed to the other idea that Adam, no matter how many Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals you can line up end to end, Adam's at the beginning of them all.
Adam is always at the beginning. That's right. I mean, if there's no death, there's no fall. If you don't have a fall, you don't need the atonement. I mean, it's a house of cards or a Jenga game, right? Just pull one thing out.
Terrell Gibbons said it best. If you just allow some allowances, all of it can be made to fit.
Oh, of course.
Yes. I like when Brian Hill says, where did the words come from?
Where did the words come from? Talking about where the words come from, what's our episode for Wednesday night at Mormonism Live?
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind as to where the words come from. But on Wednesday, we are going to have a show about the Mormon Black Hawk War, the most destructive conflict in Utah, is how it's titled here in the thumbnail on Wednesday. We are going to have with us to talk about the history as well as up to current times. We'll bring it up to date on Wednesday. Mary Meyer, the chief executive of the Timpanogos Nation, and Philip Gottfredson. It's Gottfredson. I don't know how he says it. Gottfredson. Anyway, it's Phil. And he's a great guy. And he has written a book. And I am almost finished with it. It's about the Black Hawk War and his attempt and his journey in discovering this kind of stuff. He spent decades researching. And so he'll be on the show too. It should be really eye-opening. And changed my perspective so far. I expect it will continue to.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that, because we do have Mormonism After Dark Friday, 8 p.m. Also, we just got done doing a special episode of Mormonism Live, Mormonism After Dark this past Friday. And I think it would be of special interest to folks who have not seen it. Would highly suggest that folks go check that out. Otherwise, that's all I've got. Anything else from you two before we close out the show?
No, just tomorrow night, everybody. Back here, Mormon Newscast, 5:30. I mean, this is, bring your popcorn.
I'll be wearing me green.
Gonna be it. And we can make some more bets if you want, cheesecake, whatever you guys want to bet. We can do it. Because I honestly don't know what is going to happen. And that's why it's
there
just
was
so
never a bet the
fascinating,
first time, but now that there is a bet, and if you will stay on, and I don't have a headache, which is going to cause me to run. No cheesecakes, okay? I don't want to get into cheesecakes. I don't even
love
like
cheesecake. What what?
No, it's got to be something that if I win, I want it, and then if you win, you want it. Okay.
Fair.
So money, is money good?
Money's good. Money, I can buy cheesecake if I have money. So thank you. Yes.
Okay, I'm not even sure what we'd be voting on, because they could do either of two things. They can say, I'm going to do a bunch of things.
They can do
But
5
I think within the
things.
realm of
Yeah.
possibilities, they're going to say yes with those conditions or some. Here's what I think. Here's my $50. Okay.
Yeah. Let's give our
50 bucks if you,
predictions right now.
Rebecca,
Okay.
You're my witness.
Okay.
$50 that the city council says, yes, we're going to accept the temple. You can build your temple, and the name's going to change, and the lights are going to be on or off from 11 to 5, and you can keep the height that you have submitted the second time around. That's my $50. And that's a pretty specific bet for $50. So you should be giving me odds.
Though. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. We'll see.
Henry Lessner was so adamant that he was willing to go to Utah to make this deal happen. He did not want to be sued.
Yeah.
That my gut tells me that he cannot afford for the church to figure out some way to sue them again. He's going to accept the proposal as it stands. Thank you for the name change. We would have given you a full nod anyway. We'll give you a full nod. Just make the name change, and we'll let the rest of the things go.
Even the lighting 24/7?
Even the lighting.
I think the lighting 24/7.
Wow.
I don't think so.
Wow.
No, I think they're going to fight for that lighting. I think they know that's the big issue, and I think they're going to fight for it.
Are you willing to bet $50 too, Bill?
I'm not going to bet $50 because I'm right on the fence on both of those options.
Okay. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, no, I think they'll fight for the lighting. I think they may say, we signed off on the height. We'll stick to that. That's fine. We all signed that. But no, I think they understand that the lighting is really what would be the most intrusive element for the neighbors, and that it's lit on days where, they're not there. And the council's not understanding why that's necessary. And the reason they're not understanding why it's necessary is because the church can't tell them why it's necessary. And they kept trying to say, what are your hours of operation? Is that why? What are, the lighting on the outside doesn't have anything to do with the hours of operation. And the church would not say, it's our billboard factor. They wouldn't say it. So I think they're going to keep fighting.
The Mormon church, the lights on, but nobody's home.
Yeah.
What do you think the likelihood is that Henry Lessner and the head guy there at the Planning and Zoning Committee got together for a 4-hour meeting in the back of a coffee shop somewhere and had a conversation about how to play out all of this in a way that the church would actually be? Because remember, that guy during the meeting was rubbing his face. I think he sort of recognized that the lighting being on all day or all night or off 11 to 5, that they had articulated that argument incorrectly up to that point, and this was going to be a loss for them. And he realizes, as the church's legal representation, that he blew it.
Yeah, I think so. You snapped that picture where he was like this. And like I said, that clip that we showed when he made that statement, you could sense the room just going, what? But I will say the backdoor coffee shop, no. These guys are sticklers for sunshine laws and transparencies, and they are extremely careful who they talk to and what they say. And they're so I'd be really surprised if anything like that had ever happened.
All of that stuff we
living
would
by the law.
never ever be able to know. So it would be no good for a bet, right?
Yeah.
We can only bet on things that we can all agree as to what actually happened. So Rebecca, is your position any different from mine?
I don't know. I think maybe we're kind of the same, because I think the height could be okay. I think the rest of the things don't really matter so much. But I think they will not concede on that 11 p.m. to 5 a.m.
But that was in their original plans.
Exactly.
This
And that's
is
what
the
they can
fake-
say.
this
Take it
is
back to the
fake
original.
confession,
Yeah.
which has already been agreed upon and which will play out on public TV tomorrow.
Yeah, I just saw that my co-host in the chat said light the world. Maybe that's what they'll use as an example. See, we have this hashtag, light the world. We need to do it. But yeah, whatever happens, it's going to force the church representative to try to articulate out loud why they need that lighting. And I would love to hear that. And I also have to say, I promise not to chime in because I couldn't control myself. And at some points where the church rep was talking, I'd be, not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go like this so that we can hear what they say so that I can get the clips and shorts for later. So
Here's what will
I
happen.
promise.
It'll be a replay of Las Vegas, and they'll make the big stand and say, okay, well, we're willing to agree this, but you've got to stop the lights at 11 and not turn them on until 5. And then they'll say, well, I don't know. So, well, can you talk to somebody? Yeah.
Oh, that was such an act.
Okay,
What an
we'll do
act.
that.
Yeah, you can't.
By the way,
That was
way, you guys said, and you noted correctly, that asking for the name change gave more fighting power to the church because now they've conceded it. We're already agreeing to some of your changes. Now you have to agree to some of ours. By the way, putting the temple height back in again also worked it back the other way too. The Planning and Zoning Committee going, we want 68 feet, 3 inches on that temple height was the opposite effect of asking for the name change, because that's one that Henry's going to grant no matter what. They've already agreed to it outside of that meeting, but it's a concession that we're giving you now, and so I think that works both ways. But it'll be fun. So I hope folks will join us tomorrow night. Originally, we were talking about going live at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. It will be 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time because their meeting has been moved an hour. So we'll see you at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow night, and we'll get, I think, a final decision, minus maybe a lawsuit, on what's happening here with the Fairview Temple. Folks, please wherever you're watching this, whether it's on Mormonish or the Mormon Discussions channel, please subscribe. Please share this with a friend. We would love to have folks that you love and care about join in as new viewers of the Mormon Newscast. Otherwise, folks, we'll see you tomorrow night, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time, or next Monday for the next round of the Mormon Newscast. Have a great night, everybody.
Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism. Your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you are tuning in from the heart of